And I said, I can't. I said, my convention is next week and I have to be in Atlanta. I said, now when I get back, he goes, no, you're not going to Atlanta. He said, you're going to have the kind of heart attack I don't get to fix.
They're yelling for David Manning.
David Manning.
The legendary David Manning.
A 5-time referee of the year.
Mr. David Manning.
Manning, he's got him cradle. Inside drop cradle, 1, 2, 3.
One of our business partners, who's partners with us in several business ventures around the world.
Did over 100 million last year and traveled over 40,000 reps around the United States and the world.
We want to introduce to all of our listeners here at the SoundMoney podcast, Mr. David Manning.
David Manning.
We realize that there is no mountain too high to climb, right?
I would do it again, but I would never do it again.
The SoundMoney podcast.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the SoundMoney Sound Principles podcast. My name is Josh Anderson. Alongside with me today is Zach Davis. How are you, Zach?
Hey, Josh, what's going on?
Man, it is a great day. We've got some exciting things here at the SoundMoney podcast today. We have a special guest with us today, Zach. One of our business partners, who's partners with us in several business ventures around the world, and truly one of our best friends, and somebody who I've just absolutely for the last 16 years greatly admired in business. This gentleman is somebody who, no matter where I go in the world, I can be clear across the world on the other side of the world. When I run into people who actually know this individual in lots of different countries all around the world. I know you've had the same experience all around the world. And whenever when you have that, right, you know you have something special and somebody who's greatly admired and revered. And so we want to introduce to all of our listeners here at the SoundMoney podcast today, Mr. David Manning. David, how are you?
I am fantastic, Josh. I appreciate you and Zach having me on. I'm getting excited just sitting here. I know anytime we get together, something good happens.
Well, that is true. Anytime we get together, something good happens. And we appreciate you sitting inside of the time today. David is what I consider to be a serial entrepreneur. David has, like Zach and myself, he's been involved in literally hundreds of businesses in the creation of them in lots of different industries. And maybe, David, before we get into things today, maybe you wouldn't mind telling the listeners where did you kind of get your entrepreneurial start? Like where did all of a sudden David Manning want to become a business owner and be his own man?
Well, Josh, it's crazy. If people look at my background, most people don't know. Matter of fact, the people out there listening to the podcast, some of them it's going to resonate when I tell them my background, believe it or not, was in the professional wrestling business. And I ran everything for world-class championship wrestling, the Von Erichs. The movie's out right now, The Iron Claw. And we took wrestling from, a few 100,000 a week to multi-millions a week. And we just literally changed the industry. And I think through that process, the gentleman that really ran everything was the Von Erich dad, Fritz Von Erich. And he was an entrepreneur. And everything he did, once I started sitting in on the meetings and all of the when you're planning all the matches and how everything's going to go and who's going to be the winners and who's going to be the losers and
whoa, David, whoa,
No,
you're breaking my
it can't
mind.
be rigged.
Wait, whoa.
It's real.
I thought that the Von Erichs were won all the time because they were the best. Wait a minute.
Yeah.
Okay.
they were the best and their dad ran it.
Okay.
You heard it here, folks.
You heard it here. Sorry to interrupt you.
I think through Fritz's vision, and I watched him over the years, he surrounded himself with successful people. Some of his best friends, not only at the church, but he was best friends with a gentleman here that was like one of the top real estate people in our area, Herschel Forrester. And so one of his other best friends was a guy named Jimmy Aston, who back then was CEO of all of the Republican banks. And Republic banks back then were kind of like Chase now. And so through those connections, as you guys know, if you hang around the right people, Fritz would hear about things like maybe where the Loop 635 was coming into Dallas before it was ever built. Where were the strategic corners you wanted to buy? What was the strategic land you wanted to buy to invest in? And so over the years, I watched as he just really listened to his friends and got himself in a position to where he could make the right investments, and it turned in to huge rewards for him. Not only some of those land deals. Matter of fact, I was talking to Kevin Von Erich just here not too long ago, and he just received a check with many commas in it from a piece of land that Fritz bought back in the late 70s. And so we all know there's only so much real estate. And if you happen to have an insight on where and when to buy or what's coming, boy, wouldn't that be a great crystal ball?
So you're telling me, David, that you think one of your most important, valuable assets is those you've surrounded yourself with and you've chose to learn from?
I think that's exactly what it is. And that's look at us. I mean, when we first came together, I know maybe you'll enlighten all the people on how that took place, but it was crazy how we came together. But once we did, I mean, everything started falling into place, and we were all able to use the vision that we've learned from the past to I always tell people, I may say no, but I will look at any opportunity out there before I say no. And I think one of the other attributes I picked up a long time ago, Josh, was, in networking, I was successful. I was blessed in network marketing. And I remember one time there was a guy at one of our conventions. I couldn't stand him. I hated him to the point I really wanted to punch him when I saw him. And he was making about 4 times as much money as me, but he had been very successful in networking. And he was doing a training, and I found out about 4 of my key leaders were going to his meeting. And so I went, sat in the back where hopefully he wouldn't see me in his room. But I was there really trying to protect my organization. And during that time, I heard a little niche that he put out changed the way I did networking almost forever and turned me into a big winner with something I would have never even heard of if I wouldn't have went to his meeting. And so even though I didn't like him, I've learned, keep your ears open. If it's someone successful, you want to find out how did they do it.
Zach, why don't you take a second? So comment on some of the things David talked about there, right? Of listening and being open and opportunity.
Yeah. I've always had this saying that I've always believed in: you can either be right or you can be rich, and really it has a lot to do with ego. And in the industry that you're referring to, there can be a lot of ego, right?
Yep.
But I think that's one of the most important things about the entrepreneurial spirit is being able to look and say, yeah, I don't agree with this person, I don't like this person, but dang, that was a good idea. And a lot of people who are kind of in that 9 to 5, there's the water cooler effect. I don't know if you've heard of the water cooler effect, where everybody just shows up at the water cooler and they talk bad about everybody else in the office, and they're not talking about ideas, they're not talking about philosophies, they're talking about people. And I think entrepreneurs and people who are successful, they talk about big ideas and they talk about philosophies, right? And so, like you say, if you got your ears open, even if you don't necessarily agree with individuals, morally or ethically or religiously or whatever, ideas come from everywhere. And I think that's, like you pointed out, one of the things that's made you so successful is I've watched, right? And I know there's some people that you don't get along with. You'd never know it. Like, you're just kind to everyone. And so, people want you in their circle. And I think that's a huge attribute to your success.
So I'll just share that, so the listeners know, David's history comes from being the promoter and also the referee for World Wrestling all through the 1970s, 1980s, and 1990s. And then what really grew into the entire professional wrestling world today that we know. Likewise, David's been a successful network marketer, had multiple 6-figure incomes as a distributor, and then parlayed that into having the opportunity to grow some of the largest, as an owner, creating and the sole founder of some of the largest network marketing companies ever in our space. Some of those have been in the travel industry, the travel space. He's currently one of the largest sellers of travel in the world. Sells more online travel than most other agencies in the country. And had an opportunity, I've watched as David's done business in countless arenas, and he just has a tremendous ability to pull together like-minded people and get the very best out of them to find solutions to really complex business problems. And so I would just say this: if you're listening today, just grab a notepad and pen, right? Because these things that we're going to share today come with great wisdom and great experience, and doing it now for 4 decades of success. So pretty awesome.
And if you don't mind, I have a question for David.
Go.
Is it one of the very first times that we recreated together? We went and played golf, and I remember David hit this shot that was like left of the green, bounced off the back. We were playing a desert course. I think we were in Arizona. I can't remember where we were playing.
Arizona. Yeah.
It was Arizona. And
Dove
and
Mountain.
we played.
You ever been to Dove Mountain?
Yes, that's where it was, yeah. And the I mean, it's like Josh and I, we all had money on the table, right? We were betting, and I'm like, oh, he's out now. Like, we got him. I will be danged. Josh, no other man on planet Earth would have found that golf ball, let alone be able to hit the next shot he hits to put it on the green and close out the hole. And I've watched in our relationship over the last several years that we've been friends and done business together. You have this uncanny way of falling in crap and coming out smelling like roses. Like, Josh and I giggle every time we get done talking to you. It's like, I just don't even believe that. How did that happen? Like, that was the worst scenario ever, and all of a sudden he comes out and he lands on top. What is your philosophy? I guess your mental attitude around challenges, and what's your thought process when you look at like perceivably bad situations? Because it seems like to me you just have this ability to just turn lemons into lemonade on demand.
Well, I think for all the people out there listening, when you got to expect with success is a lot of crap, and you're going to go through it, right? And so you can either let it drag you down, or you can try to look and say, okay, maybe, and I didn't plan on getting that ball on the green, but I was just happy I could hit it again. And guess what? It came out good and it went on the green. But in life, I can look back at all the different companies I've had, and I wish I could say over the years I've learned from all my mistakes and I've learned from other people's mistakes. And if I start a business today, it's going to be nothing but everything positive is happening. There's a lot of things we can't control, and there's a lot of times we'll make a decision and we have to make that decision today, and it turns out it wasn't the right decision. I wish I could say I'd made them all right. But the thing is, once again, you've made it. It's in the past. You can't go back and change it. So what you have to do is, what's the best way I can get out of it? And how do I turn this into a positive moving forward? And biggest thing is, how do I learn from it so that I don't do it again? And we all know the definition of insanity. It's doing the same thing over and over and over, but you keep expecting a different outcome. And in our businesses, we have to change. And I look at golf. I think my tie-ins with sports, and in today's world, whether if you're a lady out there, guys, you guys are just as competitive as we are. I just got through watching the Olympics here a few weeks ago, and wow, hats off to all the gold medal winners. But there was a lot of people that I watched that week went through a lot of crap, and some of them came out of it. But usually when you see people at that level, they just expect the crap to come and they don't let it distract them. And I think that's the biggest key is, just take it with a grain of salt and move forward, and don't let it stop your mission. Don't let it stop your goals. Just keep going.
And I'm gonna throw out there, right? Like you say that, right? But you say that as somebody who has some experience. David's one of the only 5-time Texas wrestling state champions. You heard that right? 5-time. No, that's not. First when he told me that, I thought
he was a super
he's
senior.
A super senior,
yeah,
right? Like,
yeah, he's a super senior.
He couldn't make it out. He failed. He had to go back. Later, I found out that apparently he was an 8th grader and won the Texas State Championship as an 8th grader. After David, didn't they have to change the rule because of you?
Well, the UIL finally accepted it, and if they would have been UIL certified at that time, I wouldn't have been. You're not eligible for the high school tournament as an 8th grader. But my coach was like, hey, why not? The rule's not there. And there's a great example of how life can knock you backwards. I had a very huge success win from the time I was a sixth grader all the way up to my sophomore year, and had to wrestle a kid from the School of the Blind. And while I'm sitting and feeling sorry for him and thinking this is really not a fair match, he literally pinned me. I mean, they said go, and while I'm thinking this is not fair, within seconds I'm on my back in a cradle and trying to figure out how do I get it, and then bam, it's over. And that was a lesson in life too. I should have thought, we're in the finals. This guy got here beating a lot of good wrestlers, and they were probably doing the same thing I was, while we're sitting and thinking, oh, this is not fair. And I think you see people in business like that. You think, there's no way they created a successful business. And I tell people, I use Amway as a big example. They had 3 failures.
Yeah.
3 failures. Did they stop? No. And look what the 4th one did.
Yeah, behemoth.
Billions.
Yeah, billions of dollars, and there's a lot of lessons there, right? That we don't. I've never met an entrepreneur that's successful that hasn't had lots of failures before their success. I just haven't met them, right? No matter. Zach and I have shared in this podcast ours. We've had lots of guests share theirs, but that's a resounding theme, right? That you're going to have failures, and it's how you react and what you change about yourself. I'm gonna share with the guests. You brought it up, David. I think it'd be fun to just share with the guests, because I think there's some lessons that we could probably help some listeners with. You and I and Zach met under really unique circumstances, and this experience, how we know each other, to me is a testament of how to use good life principles and what it's blessed us with versus how most people probably would have reacted. So I'm going to take you back in time. You and I got put on a phone call together in 2009. At the time, Zach and I were involved in a company called JD Premium. It was a nutraceutical company. I was the CEO of the company. Zach was the chief marketing officer of that company. And we get put on a phone call with this. And first of all, I'll just put it this way. I get asked to get on a phone call by a guy who mentored me when I was younger on how the space of the network marketing space worked. But he was always a little bit slimy, a little bit shady, right? Like most of the time he told people half truths, right? And so he called me one day and he said, you've got to take a phone call with my friend, and I'm just going to use his first name, Rick, right? You need to take a phone call with him. And he has somebody you need to meet. And when he puts me on the phone, he puts me on the phone with you, David. And at the time in 2009, what did you have? What did you have going on in 2009?
A lot. I had a network company that was doing very, very successful. And we had launched in travel, and we were doing great. And then I ran across some really, really good products, and I thought, boy, now's the great time to introduce the products. And so I was in the process of introducing a great product, a weight loss product, an energy product, and so I introduced that to the field. I had just landed a lot of key network leaders, and things were just booming. We were moving tons of volume. People were losing weight, feeling great, looking great. And matter of fact, I called the company High Five, and that was the way we'd start every meeting, give everybody a high five. And so life was good. And then the guy you're talking about said, you got to talk to this guy up here. They got some stuff going on. And I didn't even really know what we were talking about, but I know it led to the next thing. I know you were on a plane down here, and I didn't even know you were coming.
Yeah, I get a phone call. We get on a phone call, we talk, but it wasn't about the products and wasn't about that. It was just introductory call, right? And I get off the phone, and this gentleman told me, hey, Mr. Manning really likes you guys in your company. He would like to sell. He'd like to know if you guys are interested in buying his company. So I tell Zach this, and we look at the products, and we're like, well, they have products that are similar to our products. Like the time Zach and I had a weight loss drink, we had some energy drinks, we had some of these products, and we're like, they kind of they fit. They have some of our similar products. Is that right, Zach?
Yeah, very similar.
Very similar at the time. Yeah, we didn't know at the time, but we really similar, actually identical, because the same guy cheated both of us. But anyway, so as time would have it, I get this phone call on like a Monday night, from this guy, and he says, "Hey, David needs you to be at his office in Dallas, Texas tomorrow." And I said, "Tomorrow? Like, we are busy. I mean, and our company, Zach and I, we're humming."
Yeah, and I think when you got that call to go, I was in Arizona checking out another product at a manufacturing facility. So I'm like, I can't go.
Yeah, you can't go. Like, Zach had a tour of another facility that day, and I said, I can't come in 12 hours notice. And he goes, "David wants to make a deal tomorrow." Well, in business, right? Like, if you're in the business and you're in the business world, and you have an opportunity to maybe team up or buy something, and somebody says it needs to happen in 12 hours, well, so the next thing you know, I'm on an airplane at 6 a.m, and I land in Dallas, Texas at noon, and well, this gentleman picks me up and drives me over to David's office, and David, they bring me in and they sit me down in your office, and why don't you tell the viewers, like, from your perspective? I'm going to tell you my perspective in a minute, but from your perspective, how did the next couple hours go for you and me?
Well, Josh shows up. I'll be nice and say it that way. He shows up, and he came in and introduced himself. And that day, I'm literally rolling the products out to the Hispanic market. I've got a big meeting room in my office space, and it's packed with Latinos.
It's packed.
I've got one of my Hispanic leaders there doing meetings. And so I take Josh back to my office, and he says, "Hey, go ahead and do what you got to do, and I'll be right here." I said, "Well, I'll be back." And I go up, and I'm literally gone for like an hour.
Yeah.
And
he blows me off for an hour when I first get there.
And so I come back, and he's still sitting there. And so I'm like, "Okay, what can I do for it?" And he said, "Well, I came down. You want to sell your company? I want to buy." And I'm like, "What?" And I'm like, "My company's not for sale." And they come through the door about that time. "Hey, Dave, can you come? It's time for you to make I say, "I'll be right back." And I go up front. I'm literally gone for another hour. I'm thinking when I come back, he'll be gone. So I come back. He's still sitting in front of my desk. And he's like, "Well, I don't really understand what's going on. I mean, I can see you're busy, but did you not plan on taking some time with me? I mean, I'm here to buy your company, and you're not even..." And I'm like, "My company's not for sale." And we get to talking, and I really felt sorry for him. And I'm like, "Why don't I just take you to dinner tonight? We'll have a nice dinner. And, if nothing else, we'll discover what each one of us doing. Can we help each other out in any way? And we'll move forward." And we did. And the rest,
Rest is history. But that's a little bit of your credit and your testament to you. So I get there, right? I land at the airport, and I'm told in the car that this guy, I've never met David Manning. He's ready to sell his company. When I get to the office, when I get blown off the first hour, right? And Zach, at the time, would it be fair to say we're pretty well crushing it at the time in network marketing in our company?
We were busy. We needed to be home.
Had anyone in the time of running that company and whooping butt around the world, and I mean, our manufacturing plants in Israel, we're rocking and rolling, doing things that never been done. We're doing stuff in a plant in Phoenix like crazy. Like, had anybody ever blown you off for an hour?
No, I mean, no. We were putting up such good numbers. People are like blowing other people off because they wanted our business so bad.
Yeah, and at the time, we're one of the fastest growing companies in the world, and so to get blown off for an hour, that's kind of like, I'm not used to that. Okay,
and we were young and arrogant.
Young and really arrogant. I was really arrogant. And then when he comes back in the second time and tries to blow me off, I in an angry voice, I just said, "What the hell? Are we buying your company or what?" And he's like, I could see in his face, he had absolutely no idea what I was talking about. That the guy who had set this up had played both of us in hopes to broker something that he could financially gain from. And so in just like a fit of like kind of like a little teenager fit, I just said, "Well, you got some damn secretary here that can drive me to the hotel? I'm out of here," right? And he did. He said, "Yeah, I got somebody here." But as I'm walking out to the door, he did say, he said, "Can I at least buy you dinner tonight?" And at the time, I'm thinking, I sure as hell don't want to. I just wasted this day. I just came down here on 12 hours notice. I've been stood up. I've been lied to by this other guy that set it up. What the hell am I going to want to go to dinner with this guy for? but he was genuine. And I said, yeah, we can go to dinner tonight and talk about anything but business. Interesting. You know, I would say most men in this world, Zach, you have about 5 to 10 really good friends. I consider David to be in that category. And that night we just went to dinner. We didn't talk business. We talked entrepreneurial principles. We talked life, right? And we ended up going on. It's crazy. Sometime later, David didn't end up. We ended up coming together in that project. And but I'd like to know from your guys' perspective, what are some lessons, right, that maybe the viewers could learn from just our little experience there, that maybe we've learned that they could apply?
I personally think there's a great example. Maybe 99% of the meetings that we had that day with what took place, there would have been no dinner. But
Yes.
the fact that both of us saw enough success in the other to say, hey, okay, we'll break bread. And through that hour and a half of being together, I was able to see Josh's vision for his companies, my vision, even though we weren't talking about partnering, buying, we were just talking strategy and where the industry was and what the industry needed. And I was just really impressed with his knowledge. And then he was telling me about Zach and you got to meet my partner. This is where, and let's play some golf together. We found out we had a lot of background with the wrestling and the different things. And then, like I say, guys, it turned out to be fate because I did end up selling High Five. I sold off the nutraceutical part of my company. I sold it to JD Premium. And we had a heck of a run. And through that, we just got involved with, each other's lives. And now we've got, other businesses that are successful, knock on wood. Today they're successful. And, I look at it that I always call them, every time I talk to people, I say, I met these kids up in Utah because I've been around the block about twice as long as they have.
That's true.
And but guess what, guys? I think Clint Eastwood said it best. He just doesn't let the old man in, and I don't let the old man in.
That's true.
Like Josh knows, I'm sitting here today. I told him I could do this, but I'm launching a new venture as we speak. And you know what? That keeps me young.
That's awesome. And I would agree with everything you said there, right? One of the lessons, Zach, I'll turn to you first before I give my thought. What are some lessons that maybe the viewers could get from our experience in meeting David?
Yeah, and I think, one thing is, I would agree with you, Josh. There's very few people in the world that you would call sincere friends. Like, if David called me at 2:00 in the morning and was like, I'm in trouble, I need you in Dallas, I'd be on a plane, right? And I'd be there to do whatever I could do to help. And I think, we've made a lot of money together and we've lost a lot of money together.
Yeah, that's true.
But the money's never come between the relationship. And I think that being really successful in life is more than just making money. It's having meaningful relationships with people that you can win together and you can lose together. And when the losses happen, that's when you find out if you're real friends, right? And if you have a real relationship and what you really value most. And that's one thing I've always appreciated about David is that money's never been the most important thing. It's always the relationship, and it's with everybody that he works with, right? Which makes it really fun to work with him because that you're going to make money in the end because we're going to treat people right. The other lesson I'd pull from that too is even bad people have good ideas. Like we label people, right? And we go, man, let me ask you this, Josh.
Yeah.
If that gentleman called you today, would you take his phone call?
The minute I see it on the phone, I'm going to cringe. I'm going to immediately want to send it to voicemail. But I'm going to take the phone call.
Yeah. It's like,
because of lessons I've learned.
Yeah, and it's networking, right? Even bad people know good people, and good people know bad people. So, you just you got to give everybody a chance. I would never in a million years do business with certain people that would call me, right? If they called and said, hey, want to do business, let's do this together, I'd be like, probably not. yeah, we might be able to buy the whole world when we're done because it's going to be so successful. But I don't want to be in business with this person. But I would take their phone call because they might connect me with somebody who is like-minded, that does have my same moral compass or my same ethic structure or the same way I do business. So, the relationships are key. Your net worth is only as big as your network. And it doesn't mean you have to take everybody fishing, right? And spend a bunch of time with them. But you got to give people space and
Josh, before you jump in, and over the years now, we've probably seen each other on stage. I don't know how many times, lots, but that's one of my biggest thrills. I also consider that's one of my biggest gifts from God is speaking.
You're talented, very talented.
I think that what really brought us together to do any business was the fact it wasn't about money. Zach hit it right on the head. It was about how many people can we help with our businesses. And I think as owners, especially in our industry of networking, the owners that think like that, and I think that's what kind of hurt the industry there for a long time was owners coming in from corporate America because they saw the power of networking and they tried to run it like a corporation. Not understanding without all of those people sitting at the convention, without all those people tuning into our Zooms, there is no company.
Yeah.
And I think that's what brought us together more than anything was how can we help other people succeed in life? How can we help them become an entrepreneur?
I'm going to make, for our listeners, I'm going to make one connection for them. And then I'm going to pivot for a second to a second story. For the listeners that are involved in the SoundMoney wallet or 7K Metals, we have tens of thousands of you that listen to this podcast every week who are part of one of those companies. Those companies wouldn't exist if I hadn't taken the phone call from that guy, Rick, and met David. Like that same guy called and told me a month after he told me about David, told me about somebody named Richard, right? Called me and said, hey, I got this guy, Richard Hansen, that he wants to come in and see you and Zach Davis and meet you. And that was in 2009. And that was the first time that we ever met him either. So the same guy, Zach, who I'll just honestly tell you, if his number came up right now on my phone, I'd cringe, right? Because the guy's literally cost me and Zach and David millions of dollars, losses, real dollars, right? But he also brought me some of my best friends, right?
Yeah.
And so that's a powerful lesson.
And the real reason that he would cringe, if Rick called Josh today, the real reason he would cringe is because he'd be telling him he's staying at one of his other properties and moving
Hey. It's possible. He might have squatted in one of my properties for like 9 months and I didn't even know. And David had to break it to me.
And he drove there in David's car.
Yeah, he drove there in the car I loaded. What's funny is I called Josh up and I said, hey, I noticed you still got that property out there in Las Vegas. I said, I got good news and bad news. He said, what's that? I said, well, the bad news is Rick's still there. The good news is you got cable TV today.
Yeah, you did say that. I can remember the phone call. Well, but at the end of the day, we're trying to help the man. So I'm gonna pivot something. I just thought of an experience, right? Like I had no intention of sharing this, but this is a unique thing. So like all entrepreneurs, Zach, you and I have had times that we didn't do well in business, right? We've had times we really sucked. And the life cycle of an entrepreneur, because you risk everything, sometimes you're up here at the top of the world, and other times you're right down here at the bottom of the world, right? And you mentioned in sharing that the reason it's been our relationship with Dave has been so good in business is because it hasn't been about the money. And there was a time that Zach and I, right, we were in a pretty bad way, right? We had one of our businesses, we had started a business, it had really done really bad and got ourselves upside down by millions of dollars, like
really bad.
Really bad, okay? To the point we're in bad shape. And I'll never forget, right? David at that time, and we've been lucky enough in our business careers since 2009. Sometimes when Zach and I have been here, David's been a little here, and sometimes we've been here and David. And I'll never forget, right? We're in a bad way. we fly out to see David in Dallas, Texas, when we're in a pretty pickle, and not to go tell him about our problems or anything else. We're going to go look at an opportunity together. But while we're there, he realizes, and he's asking questions, and he finds out that we're in a pretty bad way, right? And I'll never forget, right? We go to leave, and David just hands Zach and I a check and says, I'd imagine this would help get your families by for the next 5-6 months. It's a big check. And there was no like contract. There was no, hey, how are you going to pay this back? Right. And it meant the world to me, right? It really meant the world. Now, fast forward, an opportunity that Zach and I got to pay it back, not pay it back in money. Okay. David, I just want you to tell real quick, at the time you had a company called Vacation Travel, killing it. Like, I mean, 80,000 people, your conventions were getting 6,000, 7,000 people. Tell us a little bit about leading up. You had a convention. Zach and I were going to go out. We had a company at the time. At the time, Zach and I had a really big apparel business, and we were gonna come out and help sell apparel, your apparel, to 7,000 people, 6,000 people in the audience. And so we were going to come out to your convention, and it was going to be a chance for us just to get together and hang out for the week. So we were excited. Leading up to your convention that year, what happened to you?
Well, we're talking, guys. This was 2015, and I like to hunt, as many of your listeners like to hunt. You guys like to hunt, and so I was 2 weeks out from my convention. We were sold out, about 7,000 people in Atlanta, and I was on the way to the deer lease to load corn into feeders, and I hear this commercial on the radio about a deal in Las Colinas, which is about literally 25, 30 miles from me, called ViaScan. And if you come in, they could see if you had any pre-cancer, or if you, check your heart out and your carotid artery, all this with a scan. And it sounded interesting. I go down, I load 40 bags of corn by myself, ladder, the whole works. I'm on the way back, and I hear the commercial again. This time they're saying, hey, if you call today, it's half price. And I thought, well, what the heck? And my wife and I were leaving for Europe literally the next day. And so I called him, was going to see if I could schedule 2 or 3 weeks out and still get the special. I wanted to know if I had any pre-cancer. And so long story short, the lady says, we're booked out for 3 months and this and that. And then she goes, but if you could come today, we can get you in at 2:00. And I'm like, oh, man, I'm dressed. I've been out loading. Of course, she said, it doesn't matter how you're dressed. You're going to be scanned. It's a scan. It takes 10 minutes. And so I literally thought, well, I could be there by 2. I said, okay, I'll do it. I called Terry and said, hey, I'm going to stop by and get that scan thing. She said, what scan thing? I said, I heard it on the radio. I'll tell you about it when I get home. So I stopped by, literally, I'm in and out of there in 15, 20 minutes. I'm sitting in the waiting room. They called me back to talk to the doc, and he's got the screen pulled up, and he's looking at everything, and he says, well, I'm looking at your scan, and he said, looks here like your lungs are healthy. I guess you never smoke. I'm guessing. I said, no, I never have. And he said, well, everything looks good. There's a little white speck here that could be a kidney stone. We'll know someday if it is. And he said, but let's talk about your heart. I said, my heart? And he goes, yeah. He goes, you have one of your major arteries is 65% blocked. You have another one that's almost 70% blocked. And you have a third one that's about 60% blocked. You need to see a cardiologist. And I'm like, but I feel fine. And he's like, you need to see a cardiologist. And I was like, okay. I said, well, tomorrow I got to go to Europe. He goes, no, you need to see a cardiologist. And he gave me a little card. He said, most people that have a heart attack, it becomes real severe during that 2 hours you're on a table and they're trying to figure out where the blockage is. He gave me a card that showed where all 3 of these blockages were. And he said, if you have any kind of pain, you have to go to the emergency room. And I'm like, doc, I feel fine. And he's like, but if you go, you give them this card. It'll save time. And so I go home. I call my doctor on the way home, and he's like, what made you go? You feel bad? And I said, no, I heard a commercial. So long story short, we went ahead and went to Europe. My doc says, just don't climb any mountains, and laughed. Well, when I come back, man, he had blown up my answering machine. You got to see a cardiologist. They sent me the scan. And so I went to the cardiologist. The cardiologist was the same way. Why'd you go? Do you feel bad? I said, no, I feel great. And they did nuclear stress tests on me, shut it down about halfway through, spent the rest of the day saying, Mr. Manning, are you okay? Mr. Manning, are you okay? Mr. Manning, are you okay? And gave me some nitroglycerin. If you start feeling bad, put one of these under your tongue. And said they were going to do where they go in through your, go up through your, from underneath and come up here to look at your heart and through your groin. And they shut that down halfway through and put me in with a surgeon. And he said, I'm moving some things around. You're going to be on my table Monday morning for a quadruple bypass. And I said, I can't. I said, my convention is next week and I have to be in Atlanta. I said, now when I get back, he goes, no, you're not going to Atlanta. He said, you're going to have the kind of heart attack I don't get to fix. He said, you are one lucky human being that you went and got that scan. And so on Monday, sure enough, I had the quadruple bypass. And these guys were at my convention, literally planned on just going there to sell apparel, but we all know how networking can work. And during that little time frame I wasn't there, I had some major leaders try to pull a coup since I wasn't there. And thank God you guys were, because our good friend Peter Hirsch, who passed here a few months ago, was able to get Josh to come in and talk to these leaders that were literally being assholes and trying to take advantage of the situation.
Well,
but I tell people, they say, well, I say, well, God was nice enough to send me a message, and thank goodness the second day he sent it for half price.
well, Zach, in that, right? So we're out there in Atlanta. We're selling apparel downstairs, helping out our friend and having a good time. And I think it's important. A lot of our listeners, we have tens of thousands of listeners who are in the network marketing space, right? They're in that direct sales space. Maybe share with the listeners like what transpired. Well, so David says, right, that several of those top leaders wanted to have a coup there with these 7,000 people in the audience. Tell the listeners what happened, and maybe we'll illustrate some of the positives and negatives about the industry.
Yeah, this is really unfortunate. I get a little choked up even David telling that story that we about lost a good friend that day, but thank goodness you're still here. This industry is really interesting, again, because there are so many good people in this industry, but it only takes a few to really just make your life miserable and infect a whole barrel of good apples. There was a couple of individuals at the company who, David's company was paying out a certain bonus to people when they first got in. And it was a really good thing for the masses, lots and lots of people. And what happens sometimes in this industry is you'll get people who reach a certain level in the commission structure where they're earning a lot of money. And then they think they have a lot of influence to sort of tail wag the dog idea, right? That I'm making enough money that if I tell the owners they got to do this, then they'll do it. Or I'm going to leave them and their company will be destroyed, right? And the real thing, I've never seen a company completely be destroyed because one person left. Like, where most of us aren't quite as important as we think we are, right?
Good lesson.
Yeah. So now I'm not saying people don't have influence, right? And I'm not saying that, but basically there was these individuals in the company that said, we want you to take this bonus. I think it was a $25 bonus that was being paid out to new people for watching some training or doing something. It's been a long time ago, but they were saying, what we want you to do is we want you to take $20 of that, give them $5, and we want you to put $20 in a new leadership pool. And we wanted to go to us, these top earners, right, that hit this top rank, and it would really enrich their lives. It was a big number that they would have been making. And they basically said that unless David does this, they had a private meeting and said, unless David does this, we're going to go on stage and we're not going to sing the song, right? Some of them said, I'm not going out at all. And you're going to announce me as a speaker and I'm not going out. And so when David says they held a coup, they had a real plan that was basically, we're going to shut your convention down. And so, we just had to make what would we do if we were there? David's on an operating table at this time. fighting for his life. And so we basically just had to go behind the stage and pull some of these leaders aside and say, you'll walk out on that stage and you'll sing the song that you're supposed to sing, or you'll be terminated today, right? We're like, we don't really know if we have the authority to terminate him or not. Don't know if David would want this or not, but like, you're not going to hold our friend hostage while he is literally under the knife fighting for his life, and you're trying to take over this company and do what is only good for you, right? This is that whole idea of, it just drives me nuts that too many people love money and they use people, right? We got to learn to love people and use money as a tool. And yeah, that was kind of a fun, that was a fun night going, oh, when David comes out, we didn't know, right? We didn't know at that time if David was going to make it or not. Like, it really was that touch and go. And so we're thinking, man, if David does wake up, is he going to fall flat back dead again? Because we just,
Well, the doctors wouldn't even let y'all tell me. They wouldn't let.
Yeah.
They had told Terry, don't let him take any calls that are going to create stress. So I didn't even find this out till almost 5 days after the convention.
Yeah, we had to just make the call, and it worked out. It worked out.
Well, and at the end of the day, it actually shaped. I would say it greatly shaped that day. Greatly shaped my philosophy and Zach's philosophy around the industry. The way that we would have never got back involved in the industry if we didn't want to fix some of those problems. If we didn't want to help the little guy and not be held hostage by one or two top leaders in the industry, right? We're here. At the end of the day, that day was
just so all your listeners know. Zach said not one person. I'm proud to say here, you guys build your company the same way I build mine, and it's based on how many people can we help, and not can we just help a few.
Yeah.
And so, just so the listeners know, the rest of the story, that group that tried to pull the coup waited about 2 months, and we hear everything. I already knew they were having a meeting in Atlanta. I knew who was at the meeting, and they decided that they were going to try to literally take 9 of them. And they said, if all 9 of us come together, and this was 9 out of about 18 of the top leaders, that there's no way he can say no. And they literally tried to do it over the phone. And you guys know what happened. Those 9 were gone when I hung up the phone. I told them all on the phone, you'll be getting a FedEx tomorrow. You're all terminated, and we will move forward without you. And I didn't know if that was going to destroy the company or not, but guess what? We went on, we thrived. And it turned out, guys, we always say, ugly can smack you in the face. I get ID theft on my company, and it ends up, that's one of the things that turned my company around and almost destroyed it, was a lawsuit that took 6 months to win back my company ID. Yeah. And so you don't ever know what's around the corner, but like I say, you just got to take it with a grain of salt. All of that's happened, but I'm still sitting here, guys, thriving, thinking how many more people can I help tomorrow? And I know you are too.
Well, and I think with that, it reminds me, I actually saw this little clip from RFK today. He was being interviewed, and you mentioned that day they were all terminated. That is not an easy decision for an owner to make. You do not take that decision lightly. And whether you're in this industry or whether you're in some other type of traditional business, when you fire people, that is not a decision that's taken lightly, and it is not fun. And you sort of have to weigh all the consequences for that. But in this clip, RFK was basically asked, how do you keep going when people just keep punching you in the face and they keep, all these personal attacks that they're doing against you? And he said, my dad was a Stoic. And he said, in Stoicism, he said, you're taught, and the philosophy is that you take no regard for yourself and for what other people think about you. You live and die by your principles. And it doesn't matter if it's popular or unpopular. If it's right, you do it. And sometimes that's a really hard thing to do in business when you know what the right decision is, but you have all the perception and the opinions of everybody else of like, what a moron. David just fired 8, 9 of his top leaders. Like, that's the dumbest decision he could ever make, right? But when you know something is right, you have to live by your principles and not waver from those, because you got to think about those 9 people on the phone, but you also got to think about the hundreds of other thousands of people that you have to keep a company running for, right? It's not just about those 9 people.
Well, no, and if you listen to those 9 people, the company wouldn't have survived anyway.
Exactly. It's like you lose them or you lose all the other ones too.
You know,
Company
I
goes
try
out
to
of business.
explain, you know, one of my trainings I do, a company takes 3 key ingredients that I always use a triangle. A triangle is equal on all 3 sides so it can't collapse. One side's the company, and the company, as you guys know, especially in today's world, it is not just the owners.
No.
It's the technology. It's thinking where AI is headed. It's all of the HR. It's everything that if it was just a company, Enron would be still around because it had the biggest, prettiest building. And then it's the product and the services. Do they meet the needs at that time? And it's the marketing. It's the comp. And if one of those is lacking, you're in trouble. And so I've always tried to build my companies based off that philosophy. And I know looking at your companies, it's the same way. Every time I come down there, I'm more and more impressed with everything you guys are putting in place now to head off what's happening 8, 10 years from now. And the reps never see that.
No, they don't see the bleed. Like, you get people all the time in this industry that'll say, you guys aren't taking the hit. You know, you make a little change or something and they're going, well, you guys aren't suffering either. It's like, holy cow. If you could see what the leadership team goes through on a daily basis in these companies, you just wouldn't say that, right? You just wouldn't say that.
High stress environment.
And you guys can't say it to your field. I can say the other day, I'm talking to Josh. And he said, well, it's a little hard on our side because, the owners aren't taking any bonuses. Guess what, field? If the owner's not taking a bonus, there's a reason.
Yep.
And he's wanting everything to stay in place. He's not thinking about himself. And I appreciate that more than anybody because we have to live it. And sometimes you got to make those sacrifices. And as an owner, if you want to be an entrepreneur, you got to put your big boy panties on because sometimes the decisions hurt you and your family more than they're going to hurt the people. But we all look forward down the road that it's going to come back 100-fold.
Yeah. As we close out this episode today, we're gonna have part 2 with David next week. But as we close out this episode, for me, closing kind of thoughts around that is a theme that I've heard today, and that both of you just hit on again. An entrepreneur, it's not about the money. I've never met an entrepreneur when they're focused on making money, like getting rich or making $1 million or $5 million or their first $100 million. Anybody who focuses on that, they never succeed. I've never met one. But when they focus on something that has real value and real ideals and real principles and something they want to accomplish, those things naturally happen. But those things also, David, when it gets really tough and you got to make a decision that can affect your family much worse than others' families, you still hold to the true principles that got you started in the first place. And you're willing to pay the price, even if it means that you don't get to take a check home to your wife for 6 months or a year. And you got to ask her to eat the top ramen, right? And not go out to dinner. Because what you're trying to do is really make a difference in the world. And I'm blessed. I have 2 of my business partners on here today with me. And these are both men of great principle who want to help people around the world and who over and over have shown me that it can be done without compromising principles. And so we're gonna close this episode. Let both of you say goodbye today, and then we're gonna have episode 2 next week with David as we dive into some stories from his wrestling past. Along with David is going to share. He's one of the unique individuals who's had the opportunity to go up against the SEC and the FTC and actually come out without an indictment, which is a miracle to me. So we might touch on some of those things. So last words from each of you for this week's episode.
For me, it's I've enjoyed it, and for all those out there thinking, I could do this, but maybe I'm going to start something on the side. Maybe I'm going to do something. I have a saying: thoughts determine what you want. It's action that determines what you get. And I can't wait for the part 2.
Thanks, Zach.
Yep, I agree with that 100%. I want to thank everybody for jumping on and listening to this episode. We really do appreciate you guys, and I hope you can pull some of these nuggets out of there that wherever you're at in life with relationships or whether it's business, or you're like David said, you're just thinking about getting in business, or you stumbled onto this podcast, you're like, what the heck, these couple of morons on here talking about all the time. Hopefully you pull something out of here that you can use this week to really advance your life in whatever area that you're really working on. So we appreciate you jumping on. Thanks. And we'll see you next time.
All right. See everybody next time on Sound Money Podcast, Sound Money, Sound Principles. Everybody have a great week. Appreciate you.
See you guys.